Around 80 million years ago, the area now smothered by the sands and stony wastes of Mongolia's desert, the Gobi, was home to many dinosaurs and mammals. Abundant in this environment were the hornless protoceratops, the meat-eating velociraptor, and several types of ankylosaurs. Skeletons were also discovered of a very unusual dinosaur oviraptor, a small theropod with a short domed skull, a toothless beak and a bizarre head crest. The crest was probably covered by a horny sheath, as is a similar-looking crest in a living bird, the cassowary. Cassowaries move quickly on land, and the crest helps them pass through dense undergrowth by pushing leaves and branches aside as they run. It has been suggested that the crest of oviraptor might have functioned in a similar fashion. But the Mongolian environment was quite arid, and there may not have been much dense undergrowth. It is possible that the crest functioned as a display and recognition structure instead. The skull of oviraptor is very unusual. It is full of openings, and in some places it is composed of only very thin struts of bone. The snout is very short, the skull is deep, and there are no teeth in the jaws. Instead, the roof and the floor of the mouth are expanded to provide a wide bony surface. When the animal was alive, this area would have been covered by a wide horny beak with sharp edges. The single crest rises from above the nostrils and stretches backward to a point just in front of the eye sockets. It is also full of openings and air chambers. Oviraptor possessed a wishbone, or furcula, that is very similar to the structure found in modern birds. Its arms are long and thin, and a crescent-shaped bone in the wrist permitted twisting of the hand. The first finger is much shorter than the other two, yet each finger terminated in a large, narrow claw. Its long limbs are long and slender, and the tail is short. These features suggest that oviraptor was agile and fast-moving. In the early 1920s, a party of researchers from the American Museum of Natural History in New York set off on an expedition to Mongolia with the aim of finding fossils of the earliest human beings. They did not discover any human fossils, but they did uncover a wealth of dinosaur and small mammal fossils. Protoceratops fossils were very abundant, as were nests full of dinosaur eggs, which were assumed to belong to Protoceratops. Found on top of one of these nests was the partial skeleton and skull of a unique new theropod, apparently fossilized in the act of feasting on Protoceratops eggs. This animal was named Oviraptor philoceratops, meaning ceratopsian loving egg thief. Joint Polish Mongolian and Soviet Mongolian expeditions in the 1970s discovered more oviraptor material, providing scientists with further information about the skeleton and appearance of this dinosaur. In 1993, a baby oviraptor was found within a fossilized egg. The egg was part of a nest that had originally been thought to belong to Protoceratops, but the baby oviraptor proved otherwise. The oviraptors found on top of the nests were not stealing eggs, as had been thought originally, but were brooding them. It appears that the mother oviraptor had perished on top of the nest while protecting her eggs during a sudden slumping of sand dune. The types of rocks in which oviraptor skeletons are found very rarely preserve soft tissues. But it is possible that oviraptor had some kind of fuzzy or feathery covering over its body, as other closely related theropods are known to have these features. Feathers, particularly along the arms, might have helped in incubation or in shading the eggs from the harsh midday sun. Although not large, Deinonychus was a ferocious meat-eating dinosaur. Its discovery in the 1960s introduced paleontologists to a whole new method of dinosaur attack and feeding. Instead of relying on a large head with powerful jaws, like most of the bigger carnivores, Deinonychus used long arms to hold its prey, with legs and toes delivering the all-important killing strike. It probably hunted in packs, rather like wolves do today. Deinonychus and its close relatives, such as Velociraptor, shared a peculiar feature of the foot: they walked only on the third and fourth toes. Attached to the tip of the second toe was a huge, curved claw, twice as long as the claws on toes 3 and 4. One of the joints on the second toe flexed against the others in a way opposite to normal joints, so that the rest of the toe and its great claw were always held off the ground, as in true dontids. The claw was covered by a huge, sharp, horny sheath like those of birds and cats. Its arms were relatively long and powerful, and 3 long fingers each ended in a sharp, curved claw. Deinonychus probably leapt at prey with arms and legs extended, its long, bony tail aiding balance. While the arms gripped the prey, the legs kicked backward and the sickle-like claws sprang into action. Recent fossil discoveries of feather-like structures in close relatives of Deinonychus suggest it might have had a feather-like covering, too.
As tall as a 6-story building, as long as 3 buses, as heavy as half a dozen elephants, this gargantuan sauropod is the biggest land animal known for sure to have existed. Argentinosaurus was the perfect herbivorous eating machine. Everything about it was intended to help it eat as much as possible. as quickly as possible, extracting the maximum energy possible from what it ate while expending very little in doing so. Its long neck let it reach high, low, and wide to crop leaves from trees and bushes while keeping its heavy legs planted on the ground. It didn't waste time or effort chewing, it just swallowed the leaves whole and let the bacteria in its gut break the fibers down. Not needing heavy teeth for chewing meant its head was light and easy to support. And so it evolved ever bigger, doing so in a symbiotic relationship with Mapusaurus. Its discovery began in 1988 when a Patagonian sheep farmer named Guillermo Heredia found what looked like a petrified tree trunk on his land. But the more he peered at it, the more it intrigued him, and when he called in a team of paleontologists from the Carmen Furness Municipal Museum, they concluded that it was a 1.5 meters, 5 feet shin bone. Further excavations took time. It took 5 men to haul out a mighty lump of rock that turned out to contain a single vertebra, but eventually a few more vertebrae, fractured ribs, and the sacrum were extracted from the Huincal Formation stone, enough to gauge the animal's size. José Bonaparte and Ricardo Coria named Argentinosaurus in 1993, and a general public raised on the idea that Brachiosaurus and Apatosaurus were the biggest dinosaurs had to think again.
With a skull the length of a man and a body as long as a bus, this is perhaps the biggest predatory carnivorous dinosaur ever known. Some experts believe that it grew bigger than Tyrannosaurus, though others are more conservative and suspect that both genera's biggest individuals were of similar size. In any case, size is one thing, intelligence quite another. Although paleontologists don't have much time for such questions, it is tempting to wonder which dinosaur would win in a battle between Giganotosaurus and Tyrannosaurus. Even if we accept the idea that Giganotosaurus was longer, 2 tons heavier and had bigger jaws, which were full of teeth shaped for slicing flesh, Tyrannosaurus had a bite 3 times as powerful, broader and more varied bone-crunching teeth, and a bigger brain. The question is entirely speculative in any case, as the 2 dinosaurs lived 30 years apart and on separate continents. Giganotosaurus discovery in Argentina showed that South America was not only the land where dinosaurian life may have begun, it was also where it reached its pinnacle in terms of size. Like its fellow massive Carcharodontosaurids, Giganotosaurus lived alongside gigantic herbivores. Its fossils were found in 1993 by amateur fossil hunter Ruben Dario Carolini near those of the Titanosaurid Andysaurus and Rebbachisaurid Limaesaurus. Like its relative Mapusaurus, Giganotosaurus, the giant southern lizard, may have hunted these mammoth beasts. With a high ridge along its back, a huge pair of hooked extending claws, a meter-long mouth packed with 68 serrated teeth and a body the length of a lorry, this is one of the most spectacular killers of the Cretaceous. It was probably a Carcharodontosaur, along with Mapusaurus, Giganotosaurus, Tyrannotitan and the dinosaur that gives that group its name, but its appearance sets it apart from the rest. The ridge's function is uncertain, but experts have a good idea of how Acrocanthosaurus hunted. A study of its forearms showed that they lacked the flexibility to grab other animals, but once it had lunged its head forward and caught its prey in its jaws, it could then impale its victim with its claws, holding the body in place while it ate. Several sets of large footprints have been found in Texas that seem to show a theropod moving in packs. Those footprints that are now set in stone would have been cast in mud on a coastal floodplain bordering the shallow inland western interior seaway. They are generally attributed to Acrocanthosaurus, which would not have been a quick runner. Its thigh bone was longer than its lower leg bones, a sure sign that pace was not among its attributes. But by working in groups, this huge hunter could have assailed almost anything it chose to pursue. Its bones were first found in Oklahoma and described in 1950. Was this a 4-winged dinosaur? Protofeathers covered this intriguing little dromaeosaur's body, but its front and hind limbs all bore true flight feathers. One view is that it adopted a biplane-like posture, gliding in a shallow U-shaped trajectory between trees in the Asian woodlands, while others think it could fly. Some experts see Microraptor's 4 wings as an evolutionary dead end, but others note that eagles also have flight feathers on their legs, suggesting they may have evolved from 4-winged ancestors. Shu Singh described Microraptor in 2003, and now an estimated 300 specimens are held in museums and institutions around the world. Many preserve details of feathers, which hint at dark and light bars of color. Its great abundance in the fossil record shows that Microraptor must have been one of the commonest little predators in its habitat. In 2011, Xu and two colleagues described a specimen with the fossilized bones of a small bird in its stomach. Another contains remnants of a small mammal's bones. The bird Xu mentioned lived in the trees rather than on the ground, so the fossil provided possible evidence that Microraptor hunted in trees. Its claws would have enabled it to scale trunks and branches in pursuit of prey. This behavior reinforces the idea of a down from the trees rather than up from the ground origin of flight. Microraptor's eyes seem suited for nocturnal activity, suggesting it hunted under cover of darkness. Dagger-like lower front teeth jutting straight out of its mouth mark Magicosaurus out as a little carnivore like no other. It perplexed its finders at first. They were unsure whether it was even a dinosaur until they examined the entire jaw and found that, while the first four teeth gradually inclined from near horizontal to vertical, the back section was more typical of a theropod. So why did the front teeth develop so strangely? A good rule of thumb in trying to ascertain why extinct animals evolve certain features is to observe the behavior of any comparable animals alive today. An odd little group of South American marsupials called shrew opossums have similar fangs and use them to prong insects, then using their hind teeth for biting and chewing. It is suspected that the considerably larger Magicosaurus used a similar technique to catch fish and small vertebrates. By the late Cretaceous, Madagascar had been an island for 20 years, having split from India and drifted toward Africa. Then as now it was rich with strange animal life, Semosuchus, a little pug-nosed plant-eating crocodile, for instance, or Ra navis, a controversial creature that may have been a bird or possibly a flying dromaeosaurid dinosaur. Certainly among the Madagascan dinosaurs was Majungasaurus, which probably preyed on Magicosaurus judging by the tooth marks on one of its fossil bones. It was described in 2001 after being discovered in Madagascar. Maziaka is Malagasy for vicious, and the species name reflects the fact that the researchers from the University of Utah were listening to dire straits as they unearthed the jaws, some limb bones and vertebrae. In 2011, a new find meant that 2/3 of the skeleton is now known, greatly improving experts' understanding. It was a kind of abelosauroid termed a nosaurid, which was a small group forming a twig from the branch leading to the powerful, streamlined abelisaurids such as Carnotaurus and Abelisaurus. Those advanced genera were notable for their tiny arms and blunt skulls, but in the small, more primitive Magicosaurus the arms were designed for grasping, while the skull was low and elongated.
While Majungasaurus may have eaten Masiacosaurus, it definitely ate its own kind, for this is the only dinosaur to have been confirmed as a cannibal, though there's some evidence that Daspletosaurus and Tyrannosaurus were as well. Numerous Majungasaurus bones bear marks matching the size, spacing, and serration of its thick, powerful teeth, and no other carnivore its size is known to have lived on Madagascar. Identical chips and gouges are also found on the bones of the island's sauropods. While Majungasaurus wasn't huge by theropod standards, it was the island's dominant predator during the Cretaceous. It had a broad skull for an abelosaurid, a small horn on its head, and an especially horizontal posture. In 2007, American paleontologists Scott Sampson and Lawrence Whitmer digitally scanned its skull and discovered this posture by examining the ear canals, which help with balance. The inner ear contains 3 of these, of which one, the lateral canal, is parallel with the ground in the head's alert position. Think of it like a natural spirit level within an animal's head. When they positioned a Majungasaurus skull with the canal parallel to the ground, its skull was almost horizontal. By comparison, most theropods' heads inclined downwards when alert. Whitmer's 3D digital scans of dinosaurs' skulls, created via a method properly called X-ray computed tomography, have created a detailed understanding of their brain's shape and size, and thus of their likely posture, sensory perception, and behavior. The method is also far less labor-intensive and destructive than sawing through great chunks of stone. Like most other abelisaurids, Majungasaurus' arms were very small. Its strongly muscled jaws were its means of attack. The teeth were perfect for gripping into sauropod's flesh, and the powerful neck helped it shake its victims while it held them, inflicting fatal wounds. It could then rip lumps from the carcass once the kill was complete. Compare this with the slender, knife-like teeth of Carcharodontosaurs, better suited to slashing slices of meat from living animals' flanks. Its stout, muscular legs were unusually short, giving it a low center of gravity and a slow running speed, but it only needed to be faster than the sauropods that it pursued, such as Rapidosaurus. Majungasaurus remains were discovered in 1895 by French soldiers who were trying to recover Madagascar from the British, and the following year it was mistakenly assigned to Megalosaurus. New partial finds in 1955 led to it being named Majungasaurus, after the fossil site's location in Madagascar, but a detailed picture only developed with the discovery of an exquisitely preserved skull in 1996. Since then, more specimens have combined to provide knowledge of almost the entire skeleton.
Foot-long claws on arms strong enough to puncture tough fish scales. Crocodilian jaws lined with conical teeth. A dorsal sail the height of a human, atop a body as long as a lorry. Everything about Spinosaurus induces awe and fear, for this incredible theropod is the biggest carnivorous dinosaur known to have lived. And while most of the huge hunters represented variations on fundamentally the same body plan, Spinosaurus and its relatives were something different, something extremely specialized and all the more memorable for it. But only now is Spinosaurus coming to the forefront as one of the mightiest beasts of the Mesozoic era. It was discovered in 1912, 10 years after Tyrannosaurus, but for decades our picture of its appearance was too hazy for Spinosaurus to imprint itself on the popular imagination in the same way. A German expedition led by the aristocrat Ernst Freiherr Stromer von Reichenbach brought home from Egypt a series of vertebrae bearing spines up to 1.65 meters 15 feet 5 inches, high in the lower section of a long, crocodilian-like jaw. These intriguing bones were described, illustrated and housed in the Bavarian State Collection of Paleontology in the region's capital Munich, but in April 1944 Allied bombs rained down on the area, targeting the nearby Nazi Party headquarters and devastating the museum. Having spent 95 years preserved in the rocks of the Sahara Desert, the Spinosaurus fossil was destroyed after 3 decades contact with humanity. Then almost 40 years later a baryonyx claw appeared in an English quarry and unlocked Spinosaurus secrets. The fossil subsequently recovered was the first good Spinosaur skeleton, looking similar to Stromer's illustrations of those lost Spinosaurus remains, only smaller and lacking such extended spines. By comparing the two, paleontologists deduced Spinosaurus' overall proportions, scaling up from the more complete baryonyx. The creature that emerged from their calculations had a body up to 18 meters, 59 feet, long, with 2 meters long 16 feet 6 inches, arms wielding 38 centimeters, 15 inches, meat-hook claws, and a probable 1.75 meters, 5 feet 9 inches, skull, its elongated jaws studded with curved, conical, interlocking fangs. So why did it evolve such a strange and specialized form? Doing so allowed the Spinosaurs to carve out their own niche alongside more conventional theropods. Spinosaurus lived alongside the mighty Carcharodontosaurus, which was smaller but probably more powerful and had heftier jaws. Rather than compete with Carcharodontosaurus for dominion of the land, Spinosaurus focused on ruling the waters. Carcharodontosaurus could feast on sauropod flesh. Spinosaurus would gorge itself on fish and shore-dwelling animals, much as crocodiles do today. And if it seems unlikely that something so gargantuan could subsist primarily on fish, the lakes of Cretaceous Africa contained 3 meters long, 10 feet, coelacanths called Mawsonia, huge lungfish, and a formidable 8 meters, 26 feet, sawfish called Onchoprostis, among other substantial species. In 1975 fossil fragments found in the red sandstone of Morocco's Kem Desert added more skull material. Wedged between a section of jaw and tooth was a probable Onchoprostis vertebra. The discovery of the well-preserved Suchomimus revealed that the family's skulls were even narrower than previously expected, less like a crocodile's than a gharial's, with its slender snout leading to a bulbous tip that helps secure wriggling prey in the jaws. This strengthened their ability to catch fish and reduced the likelihood of their killing large terrestrial dinosaurs. Along with its smaller relative irritator, Spinosaurus had nostrils high up its snout, allowing it to breathe while largely immersed in water. A French study in 2009 assessed Spinosaur fossils' level of oxygen isotopes, which are higher in aquatic animals, and concluded that they had a semi-aquatic lifestyle, spending as much time in water as today's hippopotamuses and crocodilian. And its adaptation for fishing may even explain the huge sail along its back, according to an Italian paleontologist. Cristiano Dal Sasso observed that some herons use their wings to cast shadows over water. Fish quickly seek the shade, at which point the heron plucks them from the water with its beak. Did the vast rounded shadow of Spinosaurus' sail perform the same function? Corroborating this is a 2005 study in which Dal Sasso found evidence of sensory points within the long snout that served as motion detectors, enabling Spinosaurus to sense fish's movement underwater while its eyes were above the surface. But even if they were primarily piscivorous, Spinosaurs undoubtedly ate whatever they could. For instance, baryonyx had remnants of a young iguanodon in its gut, though these may have been scavenged. As with other specialized dinosaurs, Spinosaurus' extreme power in one environment proved to be its downfall in another. Around 97 Maya, the North African climate cooled sharply, reducing its food supply. And Spinosaurus could not adapt. It disappeared from history, and so far North Africa's rocks have yielded only scanty remains, just hinting at the size and strangeness of the hugest known theropod dinosaur.